that brings us to Ahsoka. I like this episode. I'm fine with this episode. Do I have issues with this? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the first big thing is this they clearly should have dropped this episode and last week's episode together. There was no need for this to be two separate episodes.
100% agree. 100% agree.
Yeah, but Will, how about you start this one off? Where do you want to start with Ahsoka?
Okay. So I was entertained. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the internet just like lost their shit, I'm like, all right, it was a good episode, but I mean, people are like acting like it was freaking Empire in some regard. I mean, I liked it. I enjoyed it, but I mean, and yes, I mean, whenever we, got Anakin at the end and it was in the world between worlds and stuff and all it was a nice payoff for me as a Rebels fan. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, but, I just looked at it. It was just one more leg on the journey. I enjoyed it. And also, and I got into a back and forth with someone on Twitter about this, about the lightsaber fights. And whenever you were talking about just now with One Piece, how the fight scenes were not boring. I kind of got bored with the lightsaber stuff in Ahsoka this week. Call me a heretic. I mean, I thought it was cool when Sabine, did the thing with Shem as far as, using the Mandalorian trick with the rockets, but I just felt like, I think for me, where I'm having issues, and this goes to our larger point we were making tonight about discovering new things. Uh-huh. I'm feeling like I love Star Wars, but I just feel like it's just it's just a different flavor of the same thing.
Right. Literally. Quite literally.
And yeah. And so I'm enjoying it. I'm a fan. I enjoyed it, but I'm like, okay, but I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Just fill in a different character's name, but some of these some of these things, I mean, hell, I mean, to use one example, Sabine putting the helmet on. I mean, that's just, as soon as I saw it the first episode, it was like, or second episode, I was like, New Hope, or whatever episode it was in. But yeah, so that's where I'm at with this series. I'm enjoying it. It is some nice, as a fan of Rebels, and all, it's definitely like carrying forward some of the things I loved about that series. But, it's like, get some perspective, folks. That was just my read on this episode this week. So I know I'm not, so I might get some demerits in the Star Wars Club for not gushing over it like everyone else is, but that's just how I feel.
Well, welcome to the club. As someone who constantly is like so on Star Wars, because and before, when you were saying it's like a different flavor of the same thing, like it's still ice cream, it's still good, but you can also just get sick of it, and want to try a different flavor, and then it's like, but that's not like the good stuff. That's not like the original. Or my favorite kind. But it is quite literally, and we were talking about this last time, and I can't help bringing up again and again and again, is that just like with the MCU, we're getting Star Wars so much, constant. And yes, they are at different time periods, but at the same time, you're watching this story play out in reverse. So simultaneously, you're watching the rebels in Andor come together to overthrow, that sets off A New Hope. And then simultaneously you're watching the Empire rise up again so that we can get to the sequels.
Yeah.
Like you're in reverse. So in a way, it's very fascinating to have the story, to already be aware of how history in this universe has repeated itself a few times. And we've seen the high points play out, but now we're getting a lot of the in-betweens.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is like you do have to do it a little bit more differently. Like, come on.
Yeah. And I think, and that's where Andor, I think, worked because that was, and I like and I think it's a this, whenever you started, you noted that they should have put 3 and 4 together. And that was and it was very smart because we even said that when Ahsoka started, it was smart of them to release episodes 1 and 2 together. So,
but I think why Andor worked more is because, let's be honest, Andor was just more mature. Ahsoka, it's and I know, like, Clone Wars was an animated TV show. It was made for kids. This show, it's now live action, but I can see, especially in the writing, it's still leaning more towards like the kids.
Yeah, and yeah, it is. I mean, now too. Well, there were some dark episodes where, especially just coming off a rewatch of Rebels again. There were some more.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm for the number of adults who have watched Clone Wars and are big fans of it. I know that it became more mature as it went on.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing in the writing and how things are going with this that it's not playing necessarily to the same audience as Andor did.
Right. Yeah. That's a very fair point. And it's not to say that it's bad writing because,
right.
Yeah, it's just that, Andor is sort of like, your AP levels, and Ahsoka is sort of honors level as far as, if you want to take it into the high school academic context or something like that.
Yeah. It also just had a lot more monologues about politics, which, hey, I'm fine with Ahsoka not having it, but at the same, because I wrote down a few quotes that I did like a lot of what Balon said in this episode.
Yeah.
Because I felt like a lot of his lines had, were not so much exposition for the sake of explaining what's going on, but also hinting at his own past, where he's headed in this journey. The character who I think is making or breaking this series is really Sabine.
Yeah.
Because Sabine pulled, and I'm sorry, I thought about this like a half hour before we started recording. Sabine did what Star-Lord did in Endgame. In Infinity War. She pulled a Star-Lord. So if you watch the show and you come out of this episode saying Sabine did the right thing, and you did not say the same thing about Star-Lord, then I don't know you.
Yeah.
You're a very confusing person.
That's a great analogy, because it totally is a Star-Lord move. It totally was.
It's the same thing. Like you chose your own selfish desire of getting this person back, and you were coaxed into it, while at the same time, all that's going on in my mind is like, well, she's going to clearly give it up because the writers clearly need both the good and the bad guy to go on this one-way trip. Like, there's no way out of this.
Yeah. And I guess that's just it. And I fell back to our conversation of last week when I was watching it, because we both knew somehow I was wrong in the sense that they both ended up going on the hyperspace ship. Because I know after we finished recording, I started to like talk about World Between Worlds and all that kind of stuff with you. Like, you're like, Will, shut up. This, I'm tired. So seeing Anakin this week, I was like, oh yeah, I mentioned that to you. I was like, I was wondering when they're going to weave that into the story. But I'm glad you brought up Balin, because that character has been him and Shin they both have been the most fascinating characters in this series. And to your point about like the quotes that he had, as far as like, I know you on the rundown, you had faith. I lost that a long time ago.
Yeah.
When he's talking to Elizabeth, and he shares like, the title of the episode was Fallen Jedi, and it really, it was telegraphing Anakin showing up, but also it was clearly about Ahsoka. It's also about Balin, because all of these people, the one thing they have in common is they left the Jedi Order in some form or fashion, whether it was, clearly we know what happened with Anakin, Ahsoka, and Balin. Balin, lost faith in the Order for whatever for various reasons during the Clone War period, because he knew Anakin. So,
Right.
And I guess some of the things that the Order was doing, he was just like, he's not going the path of the Sith. Shin's going the path of the Sith.
Oh yeah, Shin is gonna kill Balin.
Yeah, it's all.
Or Balin, like somebody's gonna kill Shin. Like you're more. I agree with you on Balin. Shin is just like, I've seen you before.
Yeah.
You're doing nothing.
The end of that episode, I was like, oh, Balin, watch your back, because she's going to drive that lightsaber right through you.
Yeah. I did. I really fast forward through Balin, like totally, like I don't know, coaxing Sabine and just. Mm-hmm. It's like the reverse of hostage negotiations. Like, you want to be my hostage. Yes. Mm-hmm. Give it over to me. I will keep you safe until I kill you. But I did like that moment that she does, and then Shin, and I liked how they did it. Mm-hmm. I liked the sound, because there were that scene and a few other scenes, like the Ahsoka, Balin lightsaber fight. Mm-hmm. I was constantly thinking about Phantom Menace. And the lightsabers fight from that movie, because there was a silence in it. Mm-hmm. And like a time and a pacing where I wish they hadn't cut back and forth with Shin and Sabine, because I've seen the Shin and Sabine stuff before. Yeah. I was fascinated more with Balin and Ahsoka. And then I like that moment where Sabine caves and then Shin, like the sound is gone. It felt very, very Ben.
Yeah.
And Kylo like with Rey. But like, I understand why they had to do it that way. I wish they would have figured out a cooler way to do it.
Yeah.
I really do.
Because it was so because I guess that's the thing. It was like when Huyang said at the beginning, stay together, don't get separated. And then what did he do? I mean, I guess it's the telegraphing of stuff that I think is what kept me from like having the reaction that other people had.
Yeah, I've trained you well. I've like killed your spirit. Better watch out for those telegraphers.
Yeah, because I was just like, oh, and like I said, I was entertained, but I wasn't like, I did laugh though. I did have a moment where I turned to my wife and I was just like, whenever Maruk got cut down, I was like, well, Mephisto. I was like, I guess that blows up all the Mephisto's, Maruk theories, because he was just some guy. He was just a guy.
Just a guy.
Just a guy who was conjured, and actually I think he was just conjured by the Dark Sister magic. Yeah. Because especially with the green dust that came out of him. Between that and thinking about Thanos, I just, yeah,
Right.
yeah, but,
Yeah, I think that what you're getting at is sometimes with these shows or these episodes, you get in there and you're like locked in. You're just watching, you're not thinking.
mhm,
But then every so often you have an episode where while you're watching, you're engaged, but you're also thinking, and you're like,
yeah,
okay, so this is going on, so the next thing will be this, and then this
yeah,
will happen, and then that will happen, and you don't, the moment you find yourself predicting or thinking too much about what will happen, and you're not in the moment, you're like, oh, it's awful. It's
yeah.
not that it's an awful episode. It's
No,
just like, this is not the way to watch TV.
yeah,
I should
yeah,
be lost in the story, not trying to write the story while
yeah.
it's happening.
And that's where I was this week. I
Yeah.
was, yeah, and even when, now I will say it was the moment where she got pulled in the world between worlds. I even like analyzed that too. Cause I was like, okay, either Anakin pulled her out or, I did, because as soon as she woke up, I knew exactly where she was. I was like, she's in the world between worlds. Even before Anakin like said a word. Um, cause that's, cause when they did the pan over the ocean and there was no body, I was like, okay, I was like, I started thinking about Rebels and thinking about Ezra. So, so this is one of those weeks where you're right. I was just, instead of just taking this story and just riding with it, I was being critical watcher like I said, I enjoyed it, but I just, well, I did have legitimate like yelp whenever they were in the world between worlds because it translated so nicely into live action. So that did bring a big nerdy smile on my face because, just for what that meant and what the possibilities they have with that now, by bringing it into live action and in particular with this story. Um, so, so it did open up a lot of good doors for me but at the same time, you're right. That's how I was watching this episode this week where I was like, sort of like, okay, I'm seeing where this is going. I'm seeing where this is going instead of just sitting back and enjoying it for what it is, except for when Balin was on. I mean, he did. I mean, it's sad that we lost Ray Stevenson because if we could have had him and his character around for a long time, he's just a fascinating character like Kanan was. Again, another in Rebels, and I'm missing those fascinating characters in Star Wars that just sort of pop, because of situations like I had this week where I was just like, okay, yeah, I've seen this before. And damn it, okay, we're in a new Republic. One more rant, especially with Hera's story, and where again things kind of fell for me was,
Mm-hmm.
so we're in a new Republic era. We need to have some dialogue just to explain why Luke, Leia, and Han, Chewie, and all the rest of them are not engaged in this thing.
Oh,
Because,
no.
huh?
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. As someone, I need it. Maybe not you, but I do, because it's like, I mean, Hera, just some line, or maybe it's just showing how inept the New Republic is, that they're not bringing their A game, or maybe it's just because, they are standing things down as far as the military, and Leia's all fighting that fight and against Mon Mothma. I don't know, but I just felt like I need something like that, just because it's just, I mean, I guess the reason why I say that, you've shown Luke in this time period now, and you've had him in The Mandalorian.
And Leia
So,
appeared in Clone Wars, right?
hmm?
Leia appeared in Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, so no, because she wasn't born yet. But she showed up in Obi-Wan. She wasn't born yet in Clone Wars because that was before Anakin and Padme got married.
But she was in Rebels.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Yeah.
she in one of
Yeah.
Dave Filoni's shows?
She was in Rebels. She was in Rebels.
I misspoke. When I said Clone Wars, I meant Rebels. Yes.
Yeah, she was in Rebels. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, that damn fucking fly. Yeah. I can see why it'd be irritating. I guess in my mind, they're just holding it. They're waiting to drop it. They're like gonna wait for it, just like what they did with Mandalorian.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I guess like we were talking about earlier, like with the MCU, I mean, like with the Disney Plus shows, we've had, it's the same question that gets posed. Well, where are the Avengers? So.
It is, but I don't know. I guess that's maybe a poll to put up one of these days is because we spend so much time complaining about the interconnectivity and we've seen this all before and we want these stories to be bigger and expand outside these three people.
Right.
And so they do that and then we complain, well, why aren't you mentioning why these guys are not here? Or why is that? And I'm like, you can't have the best of it.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's a fair rebuttal. But I mean, I guess, just given that they're on home one,
because these are not legit missions. I mean, Hera broke. She disobeyed orders. I mean, I think you said it 5 minutes ago. Maybe it's just because the rebels, the new leaders, the New Republic doesn't know the fuck what they're doing, so the right people are not in the know about what's really going on here. So, and they got other things. I mean, Leia got eventually get pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's just, let's see. No, it's still just, not quite time yet. Not quite time.
Not quite time. The one thing I want to say before we sign off, though, is that rewind everyone back to when Will was talking about telegraphing and saying how the episode was named Fallen Jedi. Damn it, Will, you missed your opportunity. That was clearly telegraphing the fact that Ahsoka gets pushed off a cliff. Okay, there we go.
I missed it, that one. I was too wound up in my rant.
Good night, everyone. All right, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Oh boy! Hopefully next week I'm gonna be not watching things. I'm just gonna enjoy the show for what it is and just sit back and enjoy the ride. Because when you overthink things, this is what happens. But you can find me and disagree with me about Fallen Jedi, whether they're falling off cliffs or falling off plot, at Will and Polk on Twitter, WILLMPOLK.
You can find me at SJBelmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at Scene_N_Nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.